Welcome, welcome back to the Gothic Heart. Here we have an exciting guest today who lives an alternative lifestyle and turned it into a career, which is the dream, turning your passion into your career. So we've got Rook, also known as Roger, here today. He runs a tabletop role-playing game company, and I'm so excited to bring this to you guys because one of the things we often talk about is how we can infuse our brand or our personalities into our work, especially if it's corporate. Well, here's someone who you don't even have to infuse it into work. You can make a career out of it. So I'm going to have Rook introduce himself and give us some of his background, and we'll go from there.
Hey, cool beans. Hi, I'm Rook or Roger. I'm one of the owners of Epic Sages. We're a TTRPG hosting site, so we teach people how to play D&D, Pathfinder, Starfinder, all those nerdy games where you sit down at a table and roll dice. We do stuff online and in person, and we make sure that people have fun, right? Whether it's a corporate setting or a personal setting with family and friends, or just some random yahoos you decided to meet online. We teach people the stuff and the things.
Okay, so I heard you say corporate. So is this like
Yes.
corporate companies hire you? Tell me about that.
Oh yeah, so we work with businesses and individuals. So our corporate track stuff kind of deals with like, hey, you want to work on company loyalty, middle management retraining, getting that connection from the top to the bottom. So you care about Bob and accounting, those kind of things. We kind of specialize in making sure that people remember that people are people, right?
I love that. It never even occurred to me. I mean, this is definitely not where I had originally planned on talking, but we'll go with the whims. So you can help build. So how does that work? Do you craft a specific story for that based on what they want?
Yeah. So a big part of our company is super customization for what the client needs, right? So we specialize in making things that fit solutions and go on from there, right? So if you're having a loyalty issue, right, you're the general problem is not employees. 99% of the time, we find that employees will stay at a workplace as long as they're getting paid and things are good. It's bad management that kills employees.
Yep.
So, figuring out how to fix whatever is wrong with management in a positive way where they're still going to have fun learning a new way to deal with their employees is kind of what we work with, right? I use Bob in accounting as a great example because Bob in accounting is a great worker. He does some things, but you don't ever remember Bob, right? He's just some guy on an email. Well, you play a game with him on a monthly basis or whatever. Bob is also the wizard tiefling that runs around and cause havoc, and you will remember Bob, right? You will be able to tell stories about Bob. Bob now has a connection to you and is a person and matters and has feelings. So when Bob brings up an issue, you can be like, okay, right? I value this person's opinion because I spend time with them, right? Which is where we see a lot of corporate disconnect. So there's just no up to bottom. It's just there's numbers down below and then there's people up top.
Love that. I couldn't agree more with it's who you work for, right? One person could have an amazing experience with their supervisor and stay there forever, and the other person could work for the exact same company and hate every single minute of it. So
Right.
that's amazing how you do that. And it's a monthly thing or
It's
one-time
it's
thing.
it's really how they want it to be. If they want it to be a big one-time event, we set up a big one-time event. If they want it to be a hey, we're working with Team A this week, the Team B this week, I mean, they kind of depending on how many employees they have. If it is a hey, we're going to do this every month because it's important to us, and not every month everyone can show up, right? Sometimes we use it as a reward system, right? Hey, top earners get to play in the game this week, and the people in the game get various prizes for being there. Well, our big offering or suggestion is so like it doesn't come out of like physical money out of your pocket. Is hey, they get extra lunch breaks, or they get time off work, or things like that. Stuff that you can provide as an employer to your employees without breaking the bank on your end, right? Having a free hour's worth of lunch isn't the end of the world for most employers, right?
Yep.
Um, Getting cool company items that you provide yourself instead of us providing it, right? We just provide the context for it showing up. Those are great ways to incentivize employees to do fun things. And they'll be surprised how addicting the gameplay and getting together as a group is. So, there's also that
Yeah.
benefit.
That is so fascinating. And I like, well, coming from what I do, which is custom jewelry, custom to any other thing. So I love that there's a big customization part in what you do. Now I know we keep talking corporate just because I got so excited about it, but was it, and I know you do a lot online, which is awesome. Oh, side note for listeners, Rook lives in Alaska. So it probably helps a lot to do a lot online. Was that, do more people do it online or in person?
So we started in the middle of COVID. So a lot of our how we
That makes
started and why we do stuff is online, just because of safety reasons, and people were still afraid of going to other people's houses and stuff like that. Also, we live in a comparatively low saturated area, so the players per population is relatively low up here. So getting games together on the regular up here is challenging to say the least. Whereas online, you can basically play with anyone, grandma, uncle, whoever, best friend across the nation. As long as you guys can agree on a time to play at, you're good to go.
Oh, that's right, time zones. Well, so my first real experience, and it wasn't a real experience, so take this with a grain of salt, is because game stores are just not really around anymore. But I got to go to a huge one in Dallas, a huge game store, and there were so many games in the back, tables, people playing everything, and it was just really interesting to watch. And I mean, I'm in Colorado, right near Denver, very urban. I'm sure they exist, but I didn't know anything about it. So it's really cool that, you've got availability online and everything. And obviously, COVID necessitated a lot of this way of connecting with people. So, I mean, it's really good. I just, how do people find you, or how do people learn about you and
So
start with you?
at this point, it's a lot of in-person connections. I will reach out to people online, or they will reach out through ads that they can check out on me, or someone says, "Hey, I know a guy," and they send them my way. We have our own podcast, and quite a few of our
Mm-hmm.
podcast guests refer people to us and be like, "Hey, we know this guy. He's super cool." Blah blah blah. And then we get talked to. So that's kind of how we get our peeps, and we also do more than just the TTRPG side, right? Besides hosting games, we also sell all the nerdy accessories to go with it, which also is part of the online shop. So if you need dice or all dice towers or things like that, we got you covered. Um,
And side note, the dice are really cool. Especially my favorite ones are little skull ones. I mean, I don't even play, but I want them. I like
yes.
those. So, well, have you always, so let's just talk about or early life, etc. So has this always been something that you were drawn to, interested in? And then how was the path that led you to start this during COVID?
So I started playing when I was about 15, and then I started running games the same year. Went through my very first campaign that year in high school with a group of Yahoo friends that we played for hours on ends on the regular. And then when I went into the army, it was one of the ways I connected with various people, and we played games and did stuff together, and it was a very fun communal thing. And while we were in, we really found that it was one of those ways that you could like get through stuff without having to get through stuff, on an emotional level. There's a lot of self you pour into these characters to make them, more believable, more you, and you go through things without realizing it a little bit better. So that's one of our side benefits that we like to tote, especially when we're working with veterans and things. It's a safe place to be, whoever the hell you need to be at the time, excuse my language. But yeah, so working with others during that kind of sparked the idea, and then a few years ago, I'm a stay-at-home dad for the rest of my free time. Me and a couple buddies were like, "Hey, why don't we turn this into a business? Hey, tax write-offs are great. We're gonna figure out a business." And we're like, "Well, what are we good at? We're good at this. We're great storytellers. We can do all these things." And they started with four of us, and then they went to three of us, and then about 6 months into the business, there's now two of us, and me and my business partner have been chugging along the last 3 years past that. Um, so the idea was to push forward and keep doing things, and that's what we've been doing.
Yeah. Well, and you and I were talking a little bit because I was so fascinated with your dice and everything. And you were talking about how, I mean, they just sell out so fast. You can't even keep them in stock. So
Yeah, yeah. So if you go online or like, I really like this picture, there's a strong chance that picture is just 6 months old and there's not a new one updated. I do my best to keep the website updated, but it's very far behind.
Yeah, I mean, almost solopreneur, small business. I mean, wearing all the hats. Totally get that. I love, well, one of the things that we always talk about here on the Gothic Heart is how to be okay with yourself, or what parts of yourself you do like, and not having to hide parts for others, etc. So this sort of almost therapeutic benefit that you're talking about is really fascinating to me. Is that something, so I know you're saying it's just a natural byproduct, but is that something you ever customized for a certain group of people?
So if that's what they wanted to, sure. But most people are not okay diving into traumas that hurt their feelings.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Some people are brave enough to do it and they roll with the punches and go from there. But I'm not a therapist, right? I don't tote therapy as a thing. It's a joke to say we're free therapy. But there's no official stuff behind it. If you get any benefits from it, we are super excited. We're happy to be
Yeah,
there for you. We're good to facilitate, but we don't guarantee anything.
of
And I
course.
think and I think it would be dishonest of me to do so.
Right. But it's still interesting. I mean, just the way you even put it, without even, let's say, any customization or story, just the way you put it, be who you need to be in that moment. I mean, you can tell right from there that that's already going to be helpful or beneficial for anyone going through anything. Um, and then I have to ask, because I ask every guest. So growing up, 15, high school, etc., having an interest like I did outside of the norm, did you get any pushback? Were there any challenges, struggles for any of that?
Well, I'd always been kind of a weird kid because I was very talkative and excitable. Um, but yes and no, I got along with everyone really well. I was one of those people that was in every single group but not really a part of anything. So being friends and whatnot, the kind person doesn't have to worry about too much pushback. If you're a nice guy, people treat you well.
Absolutely. Well, I love that. I mean, you see, again, it's not real life, but those kinds of things on TV and everything, and you just get that, people are, mean to all of them in high school, etc. I mean, I wouldn't say my growing up or being interested in, the more alternative lifestyle, music, etc., was bad or anything, but there were definitely people that didn't understand or would claim it was a phase or, think I was, a witch or something like that. So, I mean, you're
Yeah,
just people just not understanding.
there's a lot of that, but you have to care about their opinions for it to affect you. You know what I mean?
Exactly. That was actually the last episode or a couple episodes ago that we were talking about. I was like, well, I mean, is it even worth them being in your life if that's what's happening? So yeah, that's an excellent point. You have to care about their opinion before it bothers you. So, um, what again, I am definitely not an expert in tabletop role playing games. So, the services that you offer, I've been on your website, I've looked at everything, but I don't actually understand each of the options that there are.
Ooh,
So, can you
okay,
kind of run through them?
gotcha. So, best way to explain this. So, our corporate stuff and birthday parties and all that is kind of you call me and we customize and we go from there because like going through all the details of what's required for all those is way more in depth than
Right.
our regular pick and click services for everyone else. Um, so there are big giant packages that you can get that are it range from $1,000 to $10,000. And those are you can have as many players as you want. Minimum three is our requirement, but up to eight. And we don't actually track how many are in there. And it's a certain amount of time. You pick a day, like let's say Tuesday. So every Tuesday we play a game, right? Every week. If you miss a session, we miss a session. We move on and go to next week, right? You get to next Tuesday, or every other week, whichever one of the packages you pick that way, right? But it works very similar to how our normal stuff works. But it is you buy the big thing, you talk to us, we schedule a day, and we basically block off that day for you every week, whatever, right? The big exciting one is basically putting us on retainer. That allows you to be like, I want to play this day, and we play that day, and we play until the story is complete on that one, right? So it could take up to like 3 years if you play once a month or something silly. If you're playing every day, two times a day, for whatever, it ends up being like 3 months worth of work on my end. Um,
Oh,
so, and again, it depends on the system you're playing and what kind of story you want to tell and all that fun stuff. But those are the big key investments. And then on the smaller end or the more personalized end, you go in and pick a session 0, which is where we kind of like build your character, build the world you're in, talk about like safety mechanisms and things like that to make sure that you're in a fun, safe environment and getting what you want to pay for. Um, and then you go into your session 1s, which is the actual gameplay and having fun and going through your adventures. We generally don't use what people call modules, which are the pre-made stuff by like Wizards of the Coast and things like that. We do so for A, legal reasons, and B, I much prefer to create things comparatively to use other people's works.
that's the
Um,
customization. Yeah.
exactly. Well, and again, going back into the customization, you're never going to have an experience outside of Epic Sages that is Epic Sages, right? Unless you're working with one of our contractors or something silly like that. But then you're still going back to playing with one of us. But
So, are you the game master for all of these people that are
I
um
can be. I am not the
okay, but
only
you're
one.
gotcha. So they
No,
might be the game master or
so they can be. We have a certification program that is like
oh,
you play a game with us. You go through a set of tests, and then the last test is you pay for a thing. We give you a fun little module that you get to kind of custom and craft, and you run us through an adventure. And at the end of it, we give you our notes and be like, hey, you passed or failed. If you pass, you get to be what we call a master class, right? Or a third tier of certification. And it opens up the ability to take contracts from us, where you can run your own games through via our name, using our advertising, all of our fun stuff, and basically become part of us, but you're your own person, right? You work your own hours. We give you, hey, here's a job board. Do you want to take it or not? Kind of thing. So at the moment, we have a couple contractors in a couple different states, and then my business partner works in Arkansas. So it can be
Wow.
anywhere.
This is just so fascinating. I mean, the world has so many careers that you don't even know about, and it all just stems from a passion. And I mean, yes, obviously having a tabletop RPG company is more unique. They're not, just everywhere like, oh, I work at the grocery store or whatever. So we already know that it's an alternative lifestyle, but I always see a lot of Gothic and alternative influences in those games. The main one, obviously, being Dungeons and Dragons that I know about. But I mean, I just see them everywhere. I'm not, experienced, but would you agree that there is more of that sort of style or personality that does kind of lean into this, or that the stories lean that way?
So I wouldn't say they have to. I think
Oh, right.
traditionally it was much more of a kind of a subculture setting, right? Because it was nerds in a basement being weird. In the last, we'll say, decade, that's really changed. You know what I mean? There's been a lot of social perception where a lot of people have tried it. Our first year in business, we made it on a TV show called The Blocks, which is an entrepreneurial reality TV show. It's now on Prime, but our season isn't on there. I think they started at 6 and we were season 4 kind of thing. But one of the things that was really interesting to me is I went to this thing and we played the games every single morning. It's just a fun thing for so I could get some ready and could talk and speak and kind of get through my jitters for the day. And I got to introduce so many people to the game that had never seen it. They had no idea what it was. And they were like, that's kind of weird. And then we'd play it and they would just fall in love almost instantaneously. A 10-minute session and they were hooked. They were ready to do more. You know what I mean? So the more it gets introduced to people, the more relating they can make to it. You know what I mean? It's really just taking that first step with most people can be a pain in the butt. Building a brand new character takes an hour, and you have to, get through that first hour of hard math, and then afterwards it's 20 plus something at the most. You know what I mean?
Gotcha. So would
At
you
least on the
say
player's part.
there's Oh, gotcha. Would you say that there's like a character or a game or a play or something for everyone? There's space for literally any interest that could figure something out?
Oh yeah, for sure. It's really unlimited imagination, right? The other thing is, company wise, we don't just do D&D because it can be kind of limiting in your
Of
branding
course.
aspects. Now, the new stuff really does open it up to a lot of places, and you can do a lot of things and basically customize it however you need to. But there's so many other systems out there, which is why we're a TTRPG company and not a
Right.
D&D company. Is because there's just some we talked about Gothic stuff. Rook is a fantastic little TTRPG that is dark, gritty, and Gothic. Is the easiest way to describe it. And it is one of those stories where you're going to die. Your characters are going to get their butt kicked continuously. You're going to have to make new ones all the time. Because fighting a goblin is death. You might make it through it, but the next combat it's done, kind of thing. So it's one of those things where your character is never safe. The themes are way more occulty, way more. Gothic is the best explanation for the feel of it, right? And more of the pop culture gothy and not the traditional like Catholic goth.
Go. Yes.
But there are games that are very much just we take the goth aesthetic and throw it on top of the system kind of thing. So yeah.
Very interesting. And also, as something that, well, we'll tell our listeners that you and I had discussed was how people. Well, first of all, the fact that you found a need for merchandise for people to be able to play remotely and in person, etc. But that people don't only use your merchandise for playing. You were telling me that some people have bought it to make jewelry, which of course is extremely exciting to me. Have you gotten to see any of those pieces?
Oh yeah. I've seen all over the place. A lot of times people do wire wrapping of the cool stuff that they get and turn them into things. Sometimes they'll just do a drill bit through it, kind of turn it into quick, simple earrings. Necklaces are a big thing. There's actually products that we're looking at selling that are necklaces that have a D20, and inside the D20 have a whole set of mini dice. They're super cool.
Ooh, that is cool.
Yeah. But yeah, people will buy dice just for decoration, right? Because they're pretty.
Mhm.
We sell some
Yes.
super fantastic hand cut stone dice that aren't really great for rolling because they're actual rocks, but they're very pretty to look at. They make at the worst good paperweights, and the best they make decision makers, right? That's my big joke for people. Like, what am I going to use these dice for? Well, you know what you're having for dinner tonight? Take a D6 or whatever, roll it. Ah, you're having Taco Bell, right?
It's the same.
We're gonna make steak at home. You know, whatever. Make a list, roll a dice, call it good. Takes the decision making out of the relationship.
I love that. I love that. So I mean, I do custom jewelry, and I haven't had anyone come to me that's necessarily a tabletop role-playing gamer yet, but I do have someone who's extremely into anime, and I'm learning so much about that right now for a piece that I'm making, actually her engagement ring, and it's super fun to incorporate those pieces. And also, as a side note, I'm doing a wedding band where we are using stones, a garnet baguette, black baguette, and then a green garnet. I mean, a black baguette to represent lightsabers in a very inspirational way to go
Nice.
around her wedding band, to kind of contour around. It will be lightsabers. And we're talking about, inspirational, of course, never a copy, but, it's just an inspirational arc reactor that I'm getting to do right now. Where we use one of like the triangle stones, right? And then we'll put a bezel circle around it. So it's still just an inspiration, but it's so cool. And that's why when I was looking at all of your products and you had been talking about, all the things you were making and the jewelry, and I'm just like, there's so many cool things I was thinking that could be made. I actually got a fantasy author that I made him a cuff. And that was really fun, getting to put some
Nice.
fantasy in there, because I know that there's fantasy characters, a lot of fantasy in the RPG world. So, and
It's a big focus for sure.
yeah. So, I mean, I just see, even though this is Gothic Heart, but I saw so many parallels with the jewelry, or people that were going there too. And just the fact that you said people made jewelry. And then, as a side secret, I can't believe I'm about to say this out in public. But when I was in high school, a long, long time ago, this was in the 90s, I played a mud, if you know what that is. Do
Okay.
we know what mud is? So it was an RPG, but it was text based for that time period, right? There wasn't any pictures or anything. And I used to, oh my God, did I play a mud like crazy? I had my character. It was named Buffy, of course, because that was the season of Buffy. But that probably was some of the early versions of, oh gosh, what are those games that everybody plays on the computer now? Or they were, sorry, years ago. But the MUDs were the early versions of World of Warcraft and things like that. So
Oh,
I always think
100%, right? If those were the fathers of video games, right, or the first video games that were around, TTRPGs were their daddy, right? So they've been around for a while. People have been doing them for a long time, and that a lot of video games, even to this day, use TTRPG mechanics just hidden in the background where you can't see them. All the ones that are like, you have a percentile to hit somebody, they're rolling dice for you. You just don't see them rolling dice. For those of the viewers that might have played Baldur's Gate or heard of it, they show you the dice. But there's a ton of video games that are just like that do that in the background for you.
And one other thing that I noticed, because I 3D print a version of people's ring, necklace, whatever, that they can try on when I'm in the process of customizing their things so they can see it. But I noticed when I was in, years when I was learning that's a huge thing, 3D printing in your world, especially. I mean, you can find anything, characters, textures, all this thing. So, I mean, just tell me a little bit more about that. I mean, I just happened to see it by a side glance, but it seems really cool.
Yeah, so we have a 3D printer. Both me and my business owner have our own for printing out miniatures on custom demand. There's a couple of super cool websites that we can work with to kind of make it for you, or you build it, send us a thing, and we print it out for you. We also have a small library of license of cool characters that we've either contracted out or something like that we can print for people. We can also print like mugs and other silly things, or dice rollers, stuff like that can also get printed out. Though, in all honesty, the machines we have are better for miniatures than for the actual items, just because of how they're set up. So I always warn people like, yeah, maybe do something else. But it's something cool that you can do, and as a player, it's a great resource to be able, like, I'm just gonna make some enemies today. I need skeletons. Where
Yes,
2 hours
skeleton.
later, have a small army of skeletons
And then you paint
printed out.
them, or
Sometimes,
okay.
I'm not much of an artist on pretty much any sense of the word. But I recently painted a whole bunch of robots because I found BattleTech models that were for a game called Lancer, which we did a YouTube series on, and I painted all of them because I loved it. It was lots of fun. So, but
There's
I am also a fan of just gray miniatures. You know, they
no,
just make me giggle when I see them. But
this is a whole world. Whole world is opening up right now, and well, I mean, yes, we've talked about so many interesting things, but something that keeps coming up that you're saying basically over and over is something we talk about all the time is find your people, build your community, find the people with your like mindset or with your same interests and build a community. And gosh, I can't even, yours is 1,000,000% exactly that. And were there any, did you set out for that? Are there any tricks, advice that you could give other
oh,
business owners or people to find their community?
so yeah, our thing is super about community, right? Our
Mm-hmm.
podcast is semi run by our community. They pick the topics every time we do a podcast. You know, they interact with our stuff online, all that fun stuff. We make content specifically for them when they're like, "Hey, we want something that looks like this," and we go, "Ah, we can make that," and right, we'll produce it.
Very cool. That's the
Um,
custom.
well, that too, right? But I think if you are have a focused community, it's safe to be a shotgun niche, as I lovingly call my style of business, where you just shoot until it hits something, kind of thing. Um,
I mean, I don't know that that's recommended, but it definitely
oh,
worked for you.
it did, yeah, right. Well, just because we focus on such a niched community, niching down on a very niche community,
Mhm.
there's the limit to the amount of profit you can make on people that like dice, right? There's a limit to the amount of profit you can make that people want to tell stories, those kind of things, right?
Right.
So being able to spread out and do other things is also important. But that's our big thing that I would suggest to other business owners: don't be afraid to pivot. Don't be afraid to change things up because it'll get there eventually, right? Not everything works out the way you planned it, so sometimes you just don't have to be a bullheaded Yahoo to push forward, right? It took us a while to start selling products and things with our business, but we decided to give it a shot and be like, yeah, we'll see if people buy things, and it's going pretty well. So that was a good venture um, for what we do. So that's my advice: is don't be afraid to pivot.
Don't be afraid of it. I mean, that is literally what every entrepreneur has to be able to do, right? Not just stick. You got to switch if the market shifts. And did we not learn that in COVID? Don't be afraid to pivot. Got to switch things around. So, yes. What would you say your average age or people that are in this community?
Gotcha. So we say we service people from ages 5 to 9. As long as you can do some math, we can play games with you, kind of thing. But our real where we strike the money is like young adults, so 18 to like 25. Honestly, all the way up until like 35, because once we get to that point, it kind of starts to be, hey, parents, we're playing with the kids. Moms playing with their sons that are going away to college. They need some way to connect and make sure that they're going to do something for the rest of their lives, so they don't just run away. This is a wonderful way to connect, especially when they're teenagers, and it's a habit
I
building
love
thing that's like,
that.
hey, every other Thursday we go play D&D online with Yahoos, or you know what I mean. That way we can always play whenever, right? And stuff is being stressful or whatever, and you need an outlet to be angry. D&D is a great place to do it. You can bash a goblin's face in because it looks like Jerry McGee who's not nice to you or something silly. You know what I mean? We
I
talk
love
we
that.
we talked about the getting past those things. It also is a great indicator for parents to be like, hey, there's something going on here. He's not acting the way he usually acts. What's going on? And it leads into conversations so they can have a strong positive connection. Right? That's one of our talks to families is like, especially with teenagers. It allows them to be fun, right? It also allows them to see their parents having fun, right? At least somewhat. You can have a grumpy dad, but all of a sudden he's the grumpy dwarf drinking beer all the time, and it becomes a joke and it's something funny. And you know what I mean?
Yes.
You go from there, and you get to see your dad having fun rolling dice. You get to see him fail at things and be okay with that, because you will fail a dice.
Yes.
Ah, dang it! And then something funny happens, right? Or something terrible happens, and you have to deal with the consequences, depending on the table you're playing at. But generally, failure isn't the end of the world when you're playing these games, right? It's a great way to teach that. It's a great way to be seen going through those things, right? You get to see those successes. If you're one of those parents that just gets hard luck, right? Maybe you got a lucky character that just like gets to shine and you get to be happy and joyful. And being able to show that to friends, family, children is super important for people. Making those connections, uh, build lifelong memories, and it works in family, it works in corporate, it works basically anywhere, without people even realizing it until it's too late.
You are totally speaking my language there. Well, I don't have anyone that's a teenager yet, but I could totally imagine going off to college, right? And losing touch, but then like always having a way to come back. But I mean, even my oldest is only 9, but already I see her doing her own thing more often, right? Compared to my 7-year-olds and things. And I'm always like, how can I connect? Or, she just wants to read. Leave me alone, mommy. So
So,
I'm already
so,
seeing the benefits.
so silly thing. Does she like My Little Pony?
She did when she was younger. I mean, her whole room is still decorated My Little Pony. We haven't updated it.
So there's a TTRPG that's by Renegade Games, I believe. I could be wrong, but that's the focus. That's the setting. That's
My
you get
Little
to play as
Pony.
ponies running around, right?
There's got to be some Harry Potter thing,
Oh,
right?
for
I mean,
there.
she's super into Harry Potter right now, as am I, always.
So you could, because of the fantasy setting, it's really easy to turn some of the already
Anything,
existing stuff
right?
into already done stuff. But
Because there's,
Wizard
witches and
Wizards,
trolls and things. Yeah,
yep.
okay. Yeah.
Wizards of the Coast actually came out with a book a while ago called Strixhaven, and it is very much a wannabe Harry Potter esque setting. That if you wanted to follow a module that kind of did Harry Potter esque things, it's built into D&D already.
That
Excuse
is
me.
just so cool. Even just with grandparents too, to
Yep.
bring just all of them together. That
Yep. And
very,
you can
very cool. I never even thought of that.
And the best part is the participation that is needed to enjoy this doesn't have to be a lot. You know what I mean? I've played with players that said 5 words a session for, a year plus at a time, and they'll talk about the game still. They still had a great time. Their character's thing was they bonk things when it was time to bonk things. They didn't do a lot of conversations, or when they did, they had those breakout moments where they said more than 5 words in a sentence. And you got to see them fulfilled into what they like to do, right? There doesn't have to be a super hard pressure to play all the times. Again, we talk about the grumpy dad that's just playing because mom pressured him into it. They'll get into
Yep.
it eventually, right? Once the fun starts happening, subconsciously they'll just start acting as their character when they want to, when they need to. And it allows for that adult escape that people seek so often, especially people our age, where it's just like, I just need a break that I am not worrying about taxes or bills or whatever.
We're
I just want to have
kids.
fun for a bit. Right. Well, right. And then you're not worried about the kids because they might be there or in another room if they have their own computers or laptops or whatever, right? You want to go hang out with your friends and have a date night. This is one of our big ones that we do with young adults that have young ones. It's like, hey, we got toddlers at home. I don't want some random Yahoo coming over to come hang out. I also want to go see my friends, but they have toddlers, and when they get together, there's a small nuclear explosion and the house blows up. So if I could keep my toddlers over here and we have our toddlers over here, we could play games together, right? That way they can run off and take care of the kids as necessary without it being a stressful environment for them because they're at home. The babies aren't upset because they're getting ignored. They get to play at home with their toys and be chill. And then mom and dad get to sit in pajamas and drink beer, whatever the thing is. So it also makes a super easy place for that to be a thing.
I just see, like, I haven't done this episode yet, but in the future, I was going to, well, bring my husband on because he doesn't share my same Gothic interest and just show, like, you don't have to have the same interests or styles and how to make that work. But as a side note, like, if that is a situation or people are struggling to connect, like, it sounds like doing something like this, even with a Gothic or alternative feel or whatever the interest feel is, could be a super great way to find some common ground and common interests. Like so many things
100%.
I never considered. When I first read about tabletop RPG in my head, it was like, fun games. I've seen it happen in the backup places, etc. But hearing you talk, there's so much more and so many cool benefits to be had from it.
Yes.
I love that. I love that. Well, you have given me so much more information than I ever thought, and just so many cool ways that this could be applicable. Like, I didn't come in here thinking I would do this, but now I'm wondering, like, what if I put grandparents and my kids and my husband and we had something there? Because there's always a struggle, with getting the grandparents and the kids together too, or even my brother and his family too, like
Yep.
just because they're across the country.
Right.
Oh, you know what? We're going to be in touch because I just see so many benefits. But so sort of closing up, I mean, I love our discussion here, but is there anything that I'm failing to disclose or tell people about this that you want them to know?
Let's see. I mean, TTRPGs in general. There's no set right way to do it. Right, every table is going to be different, and being okay with leaving a table because it's not your thing, or finding new players that fit your vibe a little bit better is okay. Great example is me and my wife don't play together. She's not a TTRPG person. That's not her thing. She's been kind enough to play with me at times, but ever since we've had kids, it's kind of been like she just doesn't want to do that. And being okay with significant others or other people's backing out needs to be on the front of your mind when you're doing it, right? It might sound like a great idea and you want to push through things, but you also want to make sure that the people that are being there are having a fun time, right? Pushing their comfort zone a little bit is okay. Pushing their comfort zone to where they're not having a good time, keep that in mind when you are going through and deciding all the things that you're deciding for stuff and things, right? Kind of in general life advice. Be nice to people.
Yes.
It'll work out better for you.
Well, that absolutely, I mean, that brings up the point. I mean, I feel like in a couple of episodes ago where I was like, it's okay for people to not like what you do. You can still find common ground with them. It doesn't mean they have to be kicked out of your life. You can have different interests.
Right.
Man, if I could make my kids understand that, I mean, it's still like, well, blue's not my favorite color. So I guess, we can't be friends. I mean, they're past that now, right? But just in general, that lesson that just find
Yeah.
where there is common ground.
Yeah, realizing people that they are their own person is important. And again, we go back to the corporate setting, realizing that your employees aren't just numbers or number producers or anything like that. They're people with their own lives and problems and stuff like that is where a big disconnect happens, right? It's not always a power trip. Sometimes it's just like you don't understand that that's a person who's dealing with 20 other people, right? Just because it's not you doing the stuff and the things. Like Bob in accounting is talking to literally every other manager, and you were the sixth person in line today. Like, you're going to get treated as sixth person in line. Doesn't matter where you're at in the pecking order. Like, he's already working on 5 other things. And being able to recognize that he's a person and has to deal with those struggles and, like, can be funny at times without being a jerk in his emails or whatever, like, is important for people.
Yeah, a different way of connecting with them than just, this is my coworker.
Yeah.
And his name is Bob, and that's all I know. Yeah.
Right.
Better
Or
way of
not even
connecting.
knowing that. You know what I mean? How many employers just like, that guy in accounting that takes care of this, that, and the other. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, so many things I didn't even know, but I love that corporate thing. I mean, you talk about corporate retreats and corporate bonding. And when I was, regional manager, I would take my managers out once a quarter for a bonding event. I never even knew of something like that. And that could have been such a cool opportunity. So I'm so glad that you shared all of these awesome experiences or just possibilities and what they can do for people in life. It's not just a game. It can literally change your life, which is amazing. So we're going to link everything below, everything we talked about. Share, if you guys want to learn more. Rook has his own podcast, his own community. I mean, there's so much more than what we talked about today. We just talked about it in the small scope of what the Gothic Heart is about. So we'll have everything linked below. And I'm so glad that, I love learning new things and opening up my mind, but that you were willing to come share how you turned your alternative lifestyle, your passion, your interests into a career, and what that's meant for you and your community. So thank you so much.
Of course. I'd share. Wow.
All right. Well, we will talk to you next time. Thank you so much.